So we're little more than half an hour into the accession of Dido Harding as the senior steward of the Jockey Club, the first woman to hold that role. I suppose the sensible place to start, Dido, is how are you feeling about that?
Well, very honoured, slightly daunted, a bit scared.
and does that feel appropriate?
Well, I think it is. It's a 274-year-old institution, the Jockey Club, and I feel that weight of being the first woman quite keenly, and it's a huge honour to take on the responsibility. So if I wasn't feeling both honoured and daunted, there'd be something wrong, wouldn't there?
I think so, and as the first woman, is that going to signal some change for the institution of the Jockey Club?
Well, the fundamental long-term purpose of the Jockey Club doesn't change at all. For 274 years the club's existed to further the long-term health and future of racing. So there should be no change in that at all. But you and I both know the modern world is changing. And racing, I firmly believe, needs to do a really good job at listening to how society's changing, to how all of our different stakeholders, our fans, all of our participants are changing. And so that does mean that racing has to change to reflect that, and with that the Jockey Club.
Now, I should signal to everybody at home that you've already this morning done a lengthy interview with our own Nick Luck for his podcast. That's more than 30 minutes long. So it gets really in-depth into you, into your background, into your family history. So I do urge them to go and listen to that if they need to. But during that interview, you were talking about servant leadership and the need for the Jockey Club, yourself as the, in effect, board chair, and the new incoming chief executive from January 2005 to take that line. Can you expand on what you meant by that?
Yes, well, I've spent the last 5, 6, 7 years working in the NHS. One of the things you talk about in health is that the most important people in a health system are the doctors and nurses, the healthcare professionals. It's not the chief executive of a hospital. And the style of leadership is, we call it servant leadership, which is the job of the leader is to enable the people in the system, the most important people in the system, to do their best work. I think the same is true of sport. The most important people and beings in the sport are the participants, the horses, the jockeys, the trainers, the owners, the fans. The job of leadership in that complex system should be one of service rather than top-down command and control, maybe old-fashioned top-down leadership.
Okay, and so that involves a lot of listening, and you emphasise that that is what you're going to be doing. How exactly are you going to do that? What does that actually look like?
Well, it means personally role modelling it. So I was lucky enough to be elected to this role in December. So I've spent a lot of time. I thought I knew racing. I've been a racing fan since I was virtually born, and an amateur jockey for 20 years. I've spent the last 6 months around and about the country talking to people from across the sport, and my goodness, I've learnt so much. I thought I knew, and the learning curve's been vertical. So there's some personal role modelling, but also in this modern world you can do lots of listening in large scale using sophisticated data analytics to make sure that our fans and punters across the country also tell us what we should do to make the sport better for them.
I was taken by something that you said in the interview with Nick earlier. You said if something is broken or something needs doing or there's a difficult problem, my instinct is to walk towards it. What does that say, A, about Jockey Club racecourses, or Jockey Club as in toto, and British horse racing?
Well, it was more a reflection on me as an ex-amateur jump jockey. I'm afraid that's what you get. I have had a history of taking jobs that other people would say, oh, why would you do that? I do things that I care about. I care about racing. I've loved racing all my life. I wasn't reflecting on, catastrophising racing, quite the opposite. I'm actually a huge optimist about the sport. People around the world for literally millennia have loved watching horses race. We're in the entertainment business and we should be really proud of that. But we should also recognise that society's changing and we need to move with the times.
Well, British racing is facing a lot of challenges, welfare being one, affordability checks being another, the general cost of living crisis, and the Jockey Club in particular has a commercial hole that it needs to mend. So there is a problem, isn't there?
Well, one of the things I've learnt from sport actually is that the very best in the world are also the most self-critical. So you'll forgive me for allowing the duality that we can all be really, really proud of racing, but also say, yes, it needs to get better. And that's not, as I say, that's not catastrophising, that's being proud of the sport and wanting to make it better. So I'm not diminishing the challenges of any entertainment, business or any sport in the land. The cost of living crisis crisis has hit everyone. What that means is we have to do a better and better job for our customers, for our stakeholders, for our fans. And if we do, my experience in business and in the public sector is if you actually listen to the people who use your services and you improve them inch by inch based on what they tell you, things work out fine. In fact, they work out more than fine.
And the money follows.
Indeed. You should run any service, and that's what we run here, standing here at Newmarket. This is a service to all of those stakeholders. You should run it for your stakeholders, for your customers and your users and your fans. And if you do that, the money sorts itself out. If you try and run any service business the other way round, you get yourself into trouble. And that's my focus. And you can only be what you are. I'm a supermarket trained retailer, and in the end, that's how you run good shops. It's how you run good sporting venues. It's also how you run good hospitals. You listen to your stakeholders.
Now, clearly, all of those areas are complex, but racing is also complex. And sometimes racing's customers are placed in opposition with each other. That can be an issue, can't it?
Yes, and I think that's a very perceptive question, actually, that what makes racing endlessly fascinating is all the different overlapping stakeholders. I say to friends who work in tennis, imagine in tennis if the ball and the racket and the net had separate media rights payments and separate industry bodies. That's racing. We've got so many different groups, and that means it's really incumbent on us who are, honoured enough to do these sorts of jobs to work collaboratively. It's another example of the need for that sort of servant-based leadership. We have to work together and remember what we have in common, that we all love the sport and actually we all benefit. That's not to say there won't be areas where there's commercial disagreement. You can have an adult relationship where you know that for 80% of the time you're working on a shared mission, and for 20% of time there's a win-lose commercial negotiation to be done. We can be grown-ups in that process, and that's how I'd like to lead in the sport.
So strong leading is also about listening. I think you cited Gareth Southgate as a key example for that. I was also brought to mind in terms of servant leadership to the speeches that Keir Starmer has made since he has succeeded MP, if you'll allow me to cross the floor for a brief moment. But that's what he's been talking about. Do you think that's the public mood at the moment?
Yes, I absolutely do. And, country first, party second is a good motto for all of us, I would say. And I think the Prime Minister has been exemplary in the way he's described that in his first week. And as a country, we should all get behind him, whatever our party colours.
Yes, which everything you've said in this interview brings me to, in what many ways it might be a key question for people. Now, within horse racing, people know you as a fearless amateur rider, Cool Dawn's rider and owner, someone who is involved in Racecourse Holdings Trust, so has had dipped your foot into racing administration before. But to the wider public, and of course this interview goes out beyond Racing TV, it goes on to social media. You're also Baroness Dido Harding. You're associated with Test and Trace, and quite often the word debacle follows that, whether that is fair or not fair. And also the data leak for Talk Talk. So why are you the right person for the job? Many people will be asking.
Well, I don't think anyone is particularly good at articulating for themselves on a live TV interview, but let me have a go. I'm not going to pretend I've got everything right. I've definitely made mistakes in my career for sure. But I've had a lifetime's experience in consumer services. The people who shop at Tesco, who buy Talk broadband, who use the NHS, who relied on NHS Test and Trace during the pandemic, are racing fans as well. They're the same people. So I have a lot of experience in different sectors of leading organisations through transformation and change that serve the mass market general public in this country. I also am an absolutely passionate racing fan, and I come at this not as Baroness Harding, the Conservative peer. I come at this as a lifelong racing fan who spent her childhood riding the family rocking horse, watching the racing with my dad, and all I really wanted to do was ride around the Grand National. So first and foremost, this is about racing. This is not about politics at all.
What's your first job?
Oh, well, my first and most important job, arguably the only real job. Remember, I'm the chair of the organisation. It has a sort of fancy title of senior steward, but I'm the chair. And my job is to recruit the successor to Nevin Truesdale, our chief executive. Arguably, that's the only job a chair does, to lead that process. So that's job number one.
An ego-free person I see in the advert.
A low ego person. It's consistent with this view and vision of servant leadership. Someone who has a vision, wants to drive the organisation forward, but is going to do it through people and not need to be the number one person only.
Okay. Well, Dido Harding, Senior Steward of the Jockey Club, thank you very much for talking to us, and I think the only way to end this interview is to say good luck.
Thank you very much, Lydia.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.